Thank you, and good morning, everyone, and good afternoon from Geneva, where I'm based. I'm going to try to share my screen. I have a little echo, but maybe that's unavoidable. Share screen. Here we are. Share. And in presentation mode. I was in the early 90s, we're doing some internship for some ministry in the Netherlands, and they asked me if I could look into this new thing called the internet, if it was any useful for them, maybe. Should they go on it or not? That was kind of my first experience with the internet. Here we go. I hope you can see my full screen here. I hear no complaints, so that should be okay. Again, good afternoon from Geneva. Good morning to all of you. My name is Martin Schaaper. I work for the ITU. It has been mentioned already a few times this morning. The ITU actually is the oldest agency in the UN family, existing for more than 150 years, connecting the world since the dawn of the telegraph. There's 3 bureaus in the ITU: radio communication, telecommunication standardization, and the development bureau. And I'm in the development bureau, where I'm part of the ICT data and analytics division. So today I will talk about indicators for policy development. So I will frame it in terms of policy, because indicators should serve a purpose. You should not be collecting indicators because the ITU tells you to. Then I will dive a little bit into the work that we are particularly doing at the ITU on ICT statistics. And then I wanted to show a little bit of what we have, the data that we have, different aspects of the digital divide. But we are a bit low on time, so I may skip through that part or go very quickly through it before concluding. But indicators should serve a purpose, and they should be framed in the policy framework. And that's the first part of my presentation. And the policy paradigm that has been making more or less headwaves the last few years is what we call universal and meaningful connectivity, embracing the policy imperative, addressing the measurement challenge, to highlight that it's an interaction between policy and indicators, what indicators can do for policy and what policy people are asking us to measure. So when we talk about meaningful, universal and meaningful connectivity, what we mean with it is the possibility for everyone, the universality part, to enjoy a safe, satisfying, enriching, productive, and affordable online experience. So it does not mean that you have to engage in e-learning, or that going on Facebook is bad and playing games is bad and you should do something meaningful. What we mean with it is that whatever someone wants to do online, they should be able to do it in a way that's affordable and reliable and safe. So here there's a little diagram where we can see in the green-blue part, the universality part. So we want everyone to go online in terms of people, households, communities, businesses. And on the bottom part, in the middle of the diagram, you can see what we call the enablers: infrastructure, affordability, device, skills, and security and safety. And enablers actually also become barriers if they're not being fulfilled. So if it's not affordable, if it's very expensive where you are, affordability becomes a barrier and not an enabler. And where we want to go, of course, is we want to go to the right-hand part of this chart. There's a few bits that we've left out of scope. And especially on the right, I want to say what are the applications and the impact of connectivity. Not that it's not important, but again, we don't want to prescribe what people should be doing. And the impacts are very important, but they're very hard to measure. So we need different ways of measuring that. A couple of years ago, in the framework of the Digital Cooperation Roadmap of the United Nations Secretary General, we developed a set of targets, aspirational targets for 2030. We did that together with the Office of the Secretary General's Envoy in Technology, and we published them. They are targets on universality, targets on technology, and targets on affordability. I don't want to go in all of the targets specifically now. I only want to say that the targets are aspirational, so the bar is put very high, And we know that many countries will not reach them, but we at least want countries to aim for there. Also, this is linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. And we think that digital and connectivity is crucial in achieving the SDGs. That's also why we put the time limit at 2030. But of course, targets are just targets by themselves, and we want to put them into practice. And we've been fortunate to get funding from the European Union for a 3-year project to promote and measure universal and meaningful connectivity. So this project started officially on the 1st of May of this year. So we're just at the beginning of it. And basically, we have 3 main work streams. One work stream is on advocacy. So that is showing the targets, showing it to policymakers, getting it on the policy agenda, developing briefs, crashing as many meetings as we can to talk about this, all with the expected output of increased awareness of UMC. And hopefully also that policymakers will take it into account when doing their policy plans. A second work stream is around measurement and capacity building for measurement, and that's really the bread and butter of my division. So we do measure already all of the targets and more, but we need to collect more information, more data. Not all countries collect all data, so that's also where capacity building comes into play. We're planning on a host of capacity building activities, about 7 in all regions of the world, 1 in the next year, where we talk about the indicators and the methodology. And that should lead to an improved data dissemination and enhanced statistical capacity to measure UMC. And there's a research component. In particular, we will do a big publication every year, the Global Connectivity Report. And that will include policy recommendations and should lead to better policies for achieving UMC. We have a dashboard already. It's more or less in beta version at the moment. In the dashboard, you can see, for example, you can see for each target how all the countries are doing. Or if you prefer, you can go to a country, you select your country, and you see where your country is doing, how they are doing on each of the targets. Are they far away from it? Have they met the target? Are there maybe no data for it? So this is already online at our website. You will get the link later on. Since we're at the Regional Internet Governance Forum, I would also like to highlight the fact that we have an event at the Internet Governance Forum in Kyoto. So I'm hoping that if you're attending that meeting there, please do attend our workshop as well. We have a workshop on Wednesday, the 11th of October at 9:45 local time. It's also online, so you can also connect remotely, but please do have a look and do visit our event. So this is in a nutshell, basically the need for measurement. The indicators need to serve policy purposes, and we framed it in the framework of universal and meaningful connectivity. So what do we do, ITU, the statistics division? Just like the ITU, we are very old. We have been collecting statistics since a long time ago, starting with telegraph statistics, telephone statistics, telex statistics, and we've of course gone with the time. So we now are more modern, and we get to some of the products later on. We consider ourselves to be the leader in global ICT statistics, and we work on all aspects of the data. We collect the data. We develop the indicators, or we don't develop the indicators. We develop the indicators together with our member states, develop the methodologies, collect the data from countries. We build capacity. We already have been doing capacity building workshops for a long time. And as I just said, we will continue doing that. We try to make sense of the data by doing analysis and publications. We reach out through various channels, communication channels, our website, digital presence. And we're not doing this by ourselves. We are working strongly together in the UN system, but also beyond the UN system in advancing the statistical agenda. So basically all aspects of data. Now this slide comes from another presentation on innovation and the digital transformation. But if you look at the right-hand part of the slide, you can see the types of statistics that we're talking about. So we're talking about access, subscriptions to fixed and mobile telephone, devices, barriers. We collect a lot of infrastructural data on the network and network coverage for fixed and mobile. We also collect data on quality of service, on traffic indicators, but also a large bunch of indicators on how ISTs are being used. And then some of the enablers and barriers are affordability and skills that we collect data on as well. And finally, we also have information on the markets in terms of employment revenues, etc. So really a broad spectrum of what we cover. Some of these indicators serve the global measurement agenda. In the ICT indicator framework, there are 7 IST indicators only, by far not enough out of the 232. And 5 of them are under the responsibility of the ITU. They are on skills, on mobile phone ownership, on the use of the internet by individuals, but also on infrastructure in the population covered by a mobile network, and on fixed internet broadband subscriptions by speed. Our data are also being used for the UN Broadband Commission targets on the Connect 2030 agenda, which is more or less more internal, and what I just mentioned on universal and meaningful connectivity. So behind the scenes, how do we work? We work basically on the whole statistical business model. We define the indicators together with our expert groups where our member states are being represented. We have 2 expert groups, the expert group on telecom indicators and the expert group on household indicators. We collect data through annual data collections. We validate the data to check if the data makes sense and to validate, go back to countries where we have questions and doubts. We compile the data, we harmonize at country level, and we make aggregates so that we can produce regional and global aggregates. We analyze the data in a number of publications, and we disseminate the data through our data hub, our digital development dashboard, our facts and figures publications, and the global connectivity report. So from step 1 to the final step. So a little bit more about the data. This is important. In the middle, we have the ITU statistics that we collect, that we disseminate in our data hub. We collect what we call supply side data. So these are the administrative data from telecom operators. And the telecom operators usually report to the national regulators, sometimes to the ministries. And these are data, for example, on subscriptions, on traffic, on quality of service, on bandwidth. Then we have a set of statistics on prices, which we call the IST price basket. This also comes from the regulator or from the ministries, but we also do our own research on operators' website to go country by country and look at the plans that are being proposed and try to take the cheapest plan that are according to our guidelines. So that's all supply side. And then we have demand side. So this is what people do, how households access the internet and how individuals use the internet. And this has to come from surveys, because we not only want to do what people are doing, we also want to know who these people are. So what is their educational background, their gender, their age, etc. So for this, you basically need to ask the people. So you need surveys that are usually done by national statistical offices. We're also interested in what businesses do on the internet, but that's not our responsibility. That's the responsibility of UNCTAD. So they do the IST used by business surveys. This goes a little bit more in depth. I think I will skip this, but what I do want to say is that on the supply side, we have good data because the regulator, they are actually being funded. They're funded by the operators who want to operate in the country, and they often have a legal requirement as well to submit their data to the regulator. So we have good data from regulator, and the supply side data are generally well well done. Also the price data that also come from the supply side, we have basically the full data set. The problem is more on the demand side because surveys are expensive. They're not done every year, but in some countries not even done at all because there's basically no budget for them. They're done by the NSOs that are underfunded, unlike the regulators. So where we have gaps in our data, it's more on the demand side than on the supply side. The methodology is very important because, of course, we want to compare between countries. We want everyone to be talking about the same thing when we talk about indicators. So we've laid it all down in two manuals, the handbook for the collection of administrative data on telecommunications and ICT. So that's the supply side data. And the manual for measuring ICT access and use by household and individuals. So this is the demand side. We're currently having the 2020 edition, and every 5 to 10 years, we do an update to update it for everything that's happened in between at our two expert groups. Both publications are freely available on our website in the 6 languages of the Union. Data are being disseminated on our website in the Data Hub. This is relatively new. We used to have a database that was for sale, but we're now finally moving on as well to open access, and the Data Hub was released, I think now a year ago maybe. It's still under development, but already it has most or all of our data and also the data from our sister division that deals with policies, tariffs and policies, and thus the IST regulatory tracker, for example. So visit our Data Hub and have a look and look for the data that are of interest to you. Now, what we're doing is collecting data from countries that collect the data from the operators or through surveys. Of course, there has been a lot of attention in the last few years and more activity in terms of big data. And big data in some cases can replace existing data, but it's also more of a complement to existing indicators. We've been working on that already for a number of years, and in particular on the use of mobile phone big data for measuring the information society. We have a handbook on that as well. Furthermore, we are looking into open sources and building layers upon layers of these open sources, and doing this, trying to come up with our alternative estimates of, for example, internet use estimates, so that we can supplement the household surveys, which I said are not done in all the countries. So this is a way of improving and increasing the coverage of those data. This is work in progress, but it's very promising. Finally, on this part of the agenda, we are working together within a framework of other international organizations. We are one of the founding institutions of the Partnership on Measuring ICT for Development, which is a global initiative that comprises at the moment 14 international and regional agencies, all involved in official ICT statistics. So this was quite briefly why we need indicators and what we at the ITU do to collect indicators from all the countries in the world. I have a few slides with some data because it's always good to look at data. So last year, we estimated that 5.3 billion people, or 66% of the world population, was online, but 2.7 billion people were still not using the internet. We can look at that by region or by income level, and maybe of particular interest for the Caribbean is the SIDS. That there's a special aggregate where we have indicators from. You can see that in the SIDS is exactly at the global aggregate of 66%. Now, if you look at the right-hand side, you can see that young people, which are the little bars above, the little hyphens above the bars, young people are much more likely to use the internet than older people or than the rest of the population, which doesn't come as a big surprise. We can see that the gap is especially big in Africa. So Africa, that is lagging behind a little bit, is probably catching up a little bit quicker than we were afraid of. In the SIDS, we can see that 81% of the 15 to 24-year-olds are online, which is a high percentage. Another way of looking at the data is looking at the world map, and now you can see in one glance, you can see where the connectivity issues are, which are mainly in Africa, South Asia, and a little bit in Southeast Asia. Unfortunately, you cannot see the Caribbean very well, and I cannot zoom in here, but it looks more greenish and a bit orange, so it's not too bad. With big data, gives you other opportunities. It allows you to actually zoom in into great detail, even within a country or within a city. So on the right-hand side, you can see, for example, Rio de Janeiro, where you can see that the center is much denser in terms of internet penetration than the suburbs. The gender digital divide, important. We use the gender parity score, which is the percentage of males using the internet divided by the percentage of females using the internet. And when it's around 1, there's gender parity. And we can see that in the regions where internet penetration is low, gender parity is low as well, but with a very positive exception of the SIDS that has basically reached complete parity. So that is at least good news for the region. In terms of subscriptions, we can see that mobile, of course, has been dominant, but you cannot really compare mobile with fixed because mobile is often individual while fixed is shared within a household. What you can see, though, is that fixed broadband has overtaken fixed telephone. So there's now a lot of cases where a household has a fixed broadband connection without a fixed telephone subscription. And we can also see that mobile broadband is really approaching mobile cellular. So there's still people that have a mobile cellular subscription without internet, but it's slowly dying out. Mobile phone ownership is mimicking a little bit internet use, except that there's a little bit more higher percentages for mobile phone ownership than internet use. But it's kind of a natural barrier for internet use because the mobile phone is really the most common way to access the internet. So without a mobile phone, it's getting hard to actually use the internet. This is mobile network coverage. So 95% of the world is covered by a 3G network, which is needed to access the internet. 4G is, of course, the more performing technology. There we see that 88% of the world population has access to such a network. 5G, we are still at the beginning of getting the data. We say 19%, but it's probably higher already than that. Bandwidth, I'm going to skip it. Affordability, we have the affordability threshold of 2%, which is a broadband commission target. 1% would even be better, which means that if you can get a mobile broadband data package for less than 2% of your monthly income, then the internet is affordable. And again, you can see where it is not affordable, and not surprisingly, those are also the regions where internet use was very low. So we can see a direct correlation, at least, between affordability and internet use. Skills is very important, but also very complicated in terms of measurement. I would need another 5 to 10 minutes to talk about this slide alone. I will not do that, but it is important, but we're working very hard in getting better measurement of this, but it's really a challenge. So that was quite quickly some of the results. I have, I think, one concluding slide, which is that ICT statistics are really important because even in the few minutes that I spoke about what you can see, this all gives you all kind of entry points into policies. And at the country level, when you combine it with the universal and minimal connectivity paradigm, you really need indicators to know where you are, to know where you're going, and also to look at how the digital divide is within countries and between countries. Connectivity is important. This was not recognized enough at the beginning of the SDGs in 2015, but I think by now no one is doubting it anymore. Connectivity is a key enabler of sustainable development. Digital is a driver of growth. there are, and it has been mentioned a few times this morning, of course, risks associated to it, and these need to be tackled as well, also with indicators, but this is very, very, very hard. But we keep on trying, but we need better indicators on security and safety. Big data can help us, and we're working very hard on them, but we do also need to keep on collecting the indicators that we collect at the moment. Our data is freely available in line with the UN data strategy. I really recommend you to go on our website, on our data hub, and look around. So I'm going to leave you with with 2 more slides, sorry. We have 3 courses to learn more about the indicators. So I told you we have the annual on 3 issues. We also have courses on that, which are freely available in the ITU Academy, and they're self-paced online. So you can just go there, sign up, and do them at your own pace whenever you want to, and they are for free. So if you want to learn more, all the tools are there. This is some of our products, some screenshots from our website, some of our latest publications, and a link to the website. So this was maybe a little bit rushed, but still I think I got all my points across that I wanted to get across. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention.